Hey folks, I'm Luke Patterson, a senior product manager at WP Engine, and I've been spending a lot of time thinking about AI. And I've been talking to people across all kinds of backgrounds about it as well. And to be honest, I hear a lot of skepticism out there. There's always a story about somebody's boss getting excited about a flashy new AI product and then spending a ton of money on it only to watch it flop, either because the data wasn't clean or the features weren't what they were cracked up to be. I've heard some awesome success stories too, but again, I've also heard plenty of tales about teams getting pulled in by the marketing hype that didn't wind up panning out. I think most people looking at AI these days can see the untapped potential, especially when it comes to the information that lives in our WordPress sites. So, how do we structure data, build frameworks, build products that actually unlock that potential, that enhance navigation, that enhance discovery, that enhance personalization in meaningful ways? Just as importantly, what technologies are a natural fit for the WordPress world in particular, and which ones aren't quite there yet. So to gut check where the real value is, I wanted to hear from folks who are in the thick of this stuff every single day. People who know the difference between what's promising and what's just polished marketing. So I reached out to somebody who's constantly thinking about AI in the real world, our friend at Elastic, Justin Castilla. Justin began as a web development bootcamp instructor, where he discovered a passion for empowering others through clear, engaging explanations. At Redis, he transformed data structures into accessible lessons, and now at Elastic, he's focusing on enhanced search, AI integration, and observability, making complex tools more approachable. And yes, Justin is so passionate about building, he even built those bookshelves behind him. Justin, welcome.
Thank you very much. Luke, that was an amazing introduction. I feel very honored.
Well, did you also build the record player behind you?
No, but I did have to replace the drive because it is older than me. So,
well, that's fantastic. Let's talk about new stuff. So, we do search and recommendations, and so we're interested in your perspective on search and recommendations. Do you have an example of a company that is just getting it right using AI? And can you tell me kind of what they do and what they've got going on?
Well, that's a really good question. There are a few different companies that use AI within their search chain that I think do really well. I'm not quite sure if I have the ability to give their specific names just to respect their usage. But there is a certain repository of code that a lot of people are comfortable with and have used maybe since the beginning of their development. And they actually do integrate AI into their search. They've done it quietly, incrementally. And you can actually see those results when you're searching for maybe a code snippet, or you're setting a certain language within your search bar and you're trying to find, something that's similar to what you're looking for. They have implemented in their search bar hybrid search, which includes, of course, vector search, semantic search, as well as like hard semantic accuracy. So they want to actually get, what they want. So they want Java, JavaScript, Python. You can get that. But if you add your code snippet and they say, oh, this is very similar to maybe what you're looking for, that's a great example of AI being incrementally and thoughtfully integrated into search.
And so can you tell me a little bit about the technologies that underpin a really world-class search experience? And that might be a good diving in point into your technologies at Elastic.
Yeah. So Elastic, first and foremost, is a search AI company. Search is what we started with, full text search, and we are very, very good at it. We also have a fantastic vector search offering. So by combining those two with a hybrid search, you really get the benefits of the lexical accuracy of full text search, as well as the semantic and context similarity of vectorization of your content. So with those two together, we have worked very hard to create a very comprehensive suite of products and components that you can use within Elastic to basically prioritize your search results as you see fit. And the best way that you could possibly want. To put it another way, if you really want to have more lexical accuracy than perhaps semantic meaning, you can kind of fine tune those, and you can see your live results as you fine tune them. So we really want to make sure that you know exactly what your queries are looking like, so you can build your queries as you code along and get your results. And we also just have a wonderful community of users in the wild that often know way more than I do about the nuts and bolts of the query building that you can actually interact with our Slack or Discuss community forum.
And so we've talked about great user experience and then some of the technological underpinnings. The AI piece there is that vector database. Could you tell the folks a little bit about what is a vector store? What is a vector database? How is it AI? And maybe demystify some of what a lot of folks see just as a black box.
Absolutely. And yeah, for a lot of people, it can seem like a black box, and that is perfectly valid. It took me a while of just like looking up content, finding the best way that it, resonates with me. But it all starts with what computers are really good at reading and contemplating and number crunching. We love to read poetry. We love to recite sonnets. We love to read books in our own languages or learning other languages. That doesn't translate very well for computers. Computers love numbers. So to reference another black box that I would invite everybody else to kind of do research on, we take words, poetry, sentences, explanations, documentation, and we convert them to numerical representations. There are long, long lists of numbers of between -1 and 1. And those are called vectors. Now, vectors kind of measure every single dimension and nuance of something that it is vectorizing. So it could kind of keep the structure of how all these words are strung together, how long the sentences are. And this also applies, I should say, to images, video, audio, any kind of unstructured data that you can think of. They basically capture like, oh, there's an arc over here. Maybe if it's like a beach ball, there's 7 different colors. They're all of this different hue, and they all have like, 360-degree like spread. Just different little representations of that image. They all convert to numbers. And that is absolutely amazing. And that is probably beyond this conversation. But with vectors, you have all of that data and that nuance of whatever document you want to capture represented in numbers in a vector. Now, once you have that, you have a very, very powerful asset. Now, if you're looking for something that is, say you're looking for a red sweater in an e-commerce site, you can take all of the different names of, say, like red jumper, red hoodie, red sweatshirt, red jacket. Those are all going to be similar numerically once they're all vectorized to red sweater, because what we used, the model to embed or convert our vectors, it knows that a sweater is similar to a sweatshirt, it is similar to a hoodie, similar to a jacket. And so that actually can give you a comparison between what it knows as a vector and what you're asking for as a vector. It'll compare those, and you'll actually get a truly comparable number that you can use to see whether or not it's similar to something that it already knows about, or if it's very different. So if a red sweater and a red sweatshirt are semantically similar in their numerical representations, then it's also going to stand that in our translation to our own human language, they will be similar. And that's kind of how it works. And so if you're asking generative AI to create something, it's going to assemble all these different vectors that make sense, that it knows is going to make sense, into an output that will be converted to human language, and we'll be able to understand it. That's kind of like, that's a real fast, real high flyover, but it gets you started.
That's fantastic. And I definitely want to get into the relationship between LLMs and vector databases. Before that, I think the last part of that chain, all the way down from user experience to the technologies that enable that user experience, can you tell us a little bit more? Because we're interested in CMSs, and WordPress is a CMS. How you get that content. So say I've got a blog with 100 or 100,000 posts. How do I take that data, that content, those words, and get it into that vector store to make it available for those kind of cool vector similarity searches?
That's a really good question. There's a couple of different ways you can approach this. Sometimes the easiest way is if you're starting new or starting fresh. Every time you create a blog post in a human language, you can also store it in a vector store, in a vector database. So as you create a new blog, at the same time, it'll kind of branch off to the other data store, possibly Elastic. And with some fine tuning and initial setup, you can have Elastic automatically convert your blog post into a vector. And that will do a couple of different things. You can vectorize your entire blog. You can have generative AI kind of automatically create tags for you if you want. It could also recommend pictures, all these different things you can fine tune in the beginning to actually get you started for vector search. Another approach that Elastic has, and I'm sure a lot of our different vector database companies out there have, is a web crawler. So with a web crawler, you can actually give it some patterns of how your endpoints and routes work within your website, within your blog, and you can have it crawl your entire website and extract the HTML from your page. And it will store it as a vector database into that vector store. And between those two, there's also the ability, if you have an existing database where you're storing your blog posts, which I think everybody has at this point, it's almost nothing to really kind of set up some piping so your posts from your database can be ported over to your vector database. And with a couple of little fine tunings, it's called an ingest pipeline or an inference pipeline, you can just have everything just automatically converted over to a vector database for you.
And so that's really interesting because we've gone from the content that goes into that vector database with those pipelines. The vector database shows us what things are semantically similar to one another. And then we started with a product or something that you can build on top of that similarity technology in search. Can you tell us a little bit more about other kinds of products or other kinds of experiences that you can build on top of a vector database? And then bonus points if one of those involves an LLM, and what kind of experiences might get unlocked with an LLM talking to a vector store?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've talked about a little bit so far, like semantic search. So I'm looking for a red sweater. Another thing is maybe I don't know I'm looking for a red sweater. So maybe if I'm looking for a recommendation service, AI can actually step in and vector similarity can actually step in really well. So as you're reading a blog, we can actually read, we can look at the vector of that blog. We can look at the different tags and topics, and that's a fantastic opportunity to find semantically similar blog posts. And so at the end of this blog post, you might see maybe 4 or 5 different links to different pieces of writing that you can read that will be similar based off of some of the similarity algorithms that you have a hand in creating that you can continue reading, and that just drives further engagement. We actually use that. We have a fantastic example of that in our own Elasticsearch Labs blog, where all of us write articles and how-tos on how to work with AI in Elastic. At the bottom of the website, there are multiple different recommended links, and that's semantic search in action. Another with the LLM is RAG, which is extremely exciting. And I was just at a conference last week talking with a lot of startups about integrating RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation. So basically, you have an LLM, which could be Gemini, OpenAI, all these big beasts out there. What you can do is you can run your own semantic search on your own work, on your own corpus of data, and you can actually send it to an LLM and say, hey, here's all these different documents. Can you possibly give me, a kind of synopsis of what I'm looking at? Or there's somebody asked me a question and we really think that the answers are within these pieces of document. Can you go through these and create an answer based off of the question we're asking and all these pieces of data that we're giving you. That way, you're going to have somebody that you can chat with and have a conversation with that is going to be a domain expert. So a case in point is I'm working with a friend who is working in a mental health facility in Washington State. This is the state that I live in. They're a compliance manager, so they constantly have to stay abreast of all the state legislature and rules and regulations and running a mental health care facility. They also have to go through endless amounts of PDF files that, if you've ever read like state legislature or state laws and bylaws, it's extremely dry and it's extremely painful. It might as well be computer vectorized language. But the cool thing is you can vectorize those PDFs like nothing. It's super simple. Once you have those PDFs vectorized, you can do a search, a vector search on those, find the relevant information, take that information over to an LLM and give them the original query, and they will be able to translate all those really difficult, obfuscated PDF files into a real human answer, and it answers questions. So they have been super happy and absolutely amazed that I've actually been able to help them navigate, the thousands and thousands of legislative PDFs with the different, years of, when they were released, years when they're no longer, valid, things like that. And you kind of pass the burden onto, LLMs to do all that really gross grunt work where you can actually find the answers very quickly and accurately.
That's super interesting. And very last question, at the top of people's mind as they're building this stuff out, is hallucination. Can you give us maybe, I know it's not a lot of time, but a 1-minute lowdown on how people should be thinking about that, and then we'll close on out.
Yeah, that's a really good one. So with a properly built RAG, if you give them the proper information, hallucinations are just going to be by the wayside. They're just not really going to happen. There's a couple different ways to attack hallucinations. You have the most up-to-date LLM that is going to be more accurate, more trained, and more prone to just giving you factual information. You make sure that it has the proper amount of data to be able to make an informed decision. Just like us, you don't want us to make things up on the fly. You want us to have the proper evidence and information to give you a proper response. And then lastly, you need proper prompt engineering. Very, very important to say, if you do not know the answer, do not make anything up. Just say, I don't know. And it works. And prompt engineering, again, is something that a piece of information that you give the LLM every single time you contact it with a question. It basically says, hey, you are an assistant, you're friendly, you're nice. I want you to answer these questions, but do them with as much factuality as you can. If you don't know the answer, that's okay. We're not going to shut you off. Just say you don't know, and we can move on from there. That's also, a seemingly simple but very, very powerful tool to prevent hallucinations.
Well, Justin, thank you so much. That was absolutely fascinating, and we really appreciate you lending your expertise for us today.
Absolute pleasure. Anytime.
So, talking shop is great, but what I find most exciting is seeing what real agencies are out there building with AI. So I invited my friends at an agency called Trew Knowledge to show you a real world use case that's out there making a difference today. So let me quickly introduce you to Jeffrey Zalishi, their technical lead, and Anthony Moore, the CTO over at Trew. Jeffrey and Anthony, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Anthony, let's start with you. Can you give us a quick overview of Trew Knowledge and the kind of work you do over there?
For sure. So we are Trew Knowledge. We are a WordPress agency. We've been around for 16 years. We work with companies from all types of different industries, from finance, airline, education. So we have a lot of experience with all these different verticals, building WordPress sites for each one of them. As of most recent, we've been really deep diving into AI and seeing how we can leverage AI effectively for all these different verticals. So it's been an interesting challenge and obviously an exciting opportunity.
Yeah, and so The reason we're all together is, Jeffrey, a while back you showed me an AI-powered site that uses WordPress data as its foundation. And honestly, it was one of those, yes, this is exactly how we should be using AI moments. I would love for you to kind of walk us through what you've been building.
We worked with a client, Edutopia, and they are super excited about AI and the opportunities that it brings, whether it's for end users visiting the website or the educators that actually publish content onto edutopia.org. And we wanted to make sure that we had enough guardrails in place that it was easy enough for the publisher to use this and feel confident in the output that it's providing. Over here, we're in the WordPress dashboard where we could see a Gutenberg block that we built that leverages AI. Now, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, the user can come over here and they could create a prompt and then generate that output. And then in our front end, that same prompt ends up appearing. Whether the user wants to create a table or they just want to generate whatever information, maybe a summary of the article, they have that freedom to leverage AI to showcase whatever they want. Now, you'll notice that on the side over here, we do have a couple options. One of them is to allow the user to add the current post, the article that the block is on, as additional information. But you'll also notice that we have additional sources. Now, that's because in our WordPress CMS, we're actually extracting all the posts, all the articles and videos, all the content that's on the Edutopia site, and we're providing it and adding it to our knowledge base where our AI is actually able to access all this information. So over here, we're going to take a quick look at our graph database, which essentially is holding all the information that we need to provide to our AI. So we've been very selective with the information that we're going to expose. Like, our users don't have their email or anything. We're following best practice, but you'll notice over here that we have article nodes, like we have different nodes, and then we have relationships. And all these things tie in together. We essentially use these relationships to connect nodes together. So, for example, an article was written by an author, or a post or a user commented on a post. So we have a bunch of these different nodes and relationships that create these connections. And we could take a super quick look over here, but you'll notice that we're evaluating a user at the moment. And this might seem a little bit overwhelming because we see everything at the moment. We see the article, the comments I've upvoted, the comments that I've made, the categories I'm interested in, the articles I've saved or viewed. We could see a lot of information. But I mean, what if you want to compare two power users to see all the different articles that the user commented on? And maybe find the similarities. So you could see over here that all these green dots, again, these are the comments. We have these pink dots, which are the posts. And we could see which things are similar across these users. Like, both of these users, I believe, commented on this post. Over here, we're actually getting the top performing articles by middle school teachers. We're getting the most saved articles by middle school teachers, and maybe we want to get high school teachers or pre-K teachers. So yeah, this is where we see real value in AI, being able to provide internal information to the LLM and do it in a autonomous way. So whenever an article gets published to our WordPress MySQL database, we end up converting it into the embedding, determining its semantic value, and then we extract all the necessary information that we need, and we store it in this knowledge base where the AI can access whatever it needs.
We know AI has a ton of possible applications. You've just showed us some really cool ones, but maybe knowing where to start can at times be a big question. So can you talk about how you scoped your use of Neo4j, your vector database, and how you thought about what was worth building first?
I think it's a good question because like knowing where to start, I think is I think the biggest challenge when it comes to AI. And kind of what Jeff showed is certainly not where we started. We started off with something much smaller. We started off with a POC that was pretty much just a Chat GPT clone based on Edutopia's content. And the reason why we did that is one, it's super quick and easy-ish to get up and running, but it also allows some other kind of stakeholders who might be skeptical on do they want to use AI or not. So kind of getting that buy-in, trying to get some excitement around it, sparking more conversations around what it can do, really kind of helps set the foundation. And with Edutopia, they survey their audience of educators about what AI tools they might find useful. And they got a whole bunch of great feedback. Teachers actually use AI a lot to kind of help with lesson plans and whatnot. So getting all that useful feedback kind of translated to this initial tool that Jeff showed, where we had different prompts on the site that the editors can kind of put together, was kind of the secondary phase after the chatbot. So then kind of knowing where to start, starting small and simple is a great way to get started and kind of iterate from there. And as to Jeff's point, like right now the AI prompt and the responses are heavily text-based. And then we slowly introduced, now it can generate tables. And eventually we're going to want it to generate charts and graphs and images. So just being able to iterate slowly over time is definitely kind of the right way to start. AI is changing at such a fast pace, so it's easy to get, I think yourself bogged down by like all these buzzwords like agents or MCP servers. So really, what we like to do is really kind of just like ensure we're staying the course of what we want to do. Emphasize that there is incremental improvements that we can iterate over time, but really kind of staying focused on what we want to build and identifying what real use cases or what problems can we try to solve for them. And if AI is a good fit, great. If not, then that's okay too.
So being super customer inspired all the way throughout, that is a perfect note to end on. Jeffrey, Anthony, huge thanks for hanging out with us and walking through all of that. Just really, really cool to see what y'all are building. Thank y'all very much.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. Yeah, super happy to be here.
All right. Big thanks to Justin from Elastic and the crew at Trew Knowledge for this incredible conversation. And at the end of the day, AI, it's only as good as its application, as we've seen. So make sure that you're investing in what actually works and not just what sounds shiny. Well, did this session help you vet AI products better? Let us know in the chat, DM me on LinkedIn, or send us your feedback. We are all figuring this out together. So the more we share, the better we get. Thank you again, everybody. Stay tuned for more great stuff at this year's Decode.